3 days before Barlow's 25th anniversary gala, I drove out to our Millbrook location to check on the centerpiece samples and approve the final menu layout. It was a Tuesday morning in late September, cool and gray, the kind of day I used to love before everything changed. I had been running Barlow's Bakery and Catering for 25 years, 4 locations across Connecticut. My husband and I opened the first one on Elm Street in Fairfield in September of 1999 with borrowed money and more hope than sense. He died 11 years ago. I kept going. That's what you do. The parking lot was nearly empty when I arrived at 8:30. I let myself in through the side entrance and started down the hall toward the main dining room, and that's when Virgil stopped me. Virgil has managed maintenance and property for Barlow's for 23 years. He is 71, built like a retired boxer, and not a man given to sudden movements. So when he stepped out of the back corridor and put one hand flat against my chest, not hard, just firm, just stopping me, I understood immediately that something was wrong. "Don't go in there," he said, just above a breath. His eyes moved toward the dining room door at the end of the hall. "Come with me. Right now." I opened my mouth. He shook his head. He guided me to the supply room at the end of the service corridor, the same narrow closet where we kept extra linens and cases of canned tomatoes, and pulled the door nearly closed behind us. The room smelled of detergent and old wood. A single fluorescent bulb stuttered overhead. "Listen," he said. I listened. The voices came through the wall, muffled but clear enough. My son's voice first, lower than usual, careful, and then hers. His fiancée, Fiona. "She'll sign at the gala," Fiona said. "I've already prepared the packet. It'll be mixed in with the anniversary paperwork." She signs things at events without reading them. You know she does. A pause, then my son, and the transfer. 72 hours after her signature. Automatic. By Monday morning, everything moves to Reese Holdings. A brief silence. It's clean. Dr. Cruz files the cognitive assessment by 9 Sunday morning. Once that's on record, we don't even need the signature to hold. I didn't move. I don't think I breathed. "What about Virgil?" my son asked. "What about him?" Fiona said. "He's the handyman." I stood in that supply closet with a case of canned tomatoes pressing into my spine and listened to my son's fiancée describe, in a calm and organized voice, exactly how she planned to take everything I had spent 25 years building. Virgil's hand found mine in the dark. He squeezed once. I squeezed back. "Before I go any further, thank you for being here with me. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. I love knowing how far these stories travel. And just so you know, some elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. But the heart of it is true, and I hope it stays with you." When the dining room went quiet, Virgil cracked the supply room door, checked the hall, and nodded. I walked out through the side entrance, crossed the parking lot, and got into my car. I sat there for a long time. The 25th anniversary gala. I had been planning it for 8 months. The Millbrook Garden Pavilion, a 12-piece orchestra, 200 guests, a slideshow that ended with a photograph of my husband and me standing in front of that first tiny storefront in 1999. I had planned to announce my son as the new CEO of Barlow's that night. Officially, in front of everyone who mattered. I put my hands on the steering wheel and let the truth settle over me. Fiona had been with us for 3 years. My son brought her to a board meeting in the spring of 2021. A business strategy consultant, Yale-educated, polished in the way that makes everyone around her feel slightly underprepared. I hired her 6 months later as Director of Business Development. I thought she was exactly what we needed. By the following year, she and my son were engaged. I hadn't seen the signs. Not clearly, not the way I see them now. The small comments. "I think you mentioned that contract already." The concerned glances when I paused mid-sentence to find a word. The way she'd steer my son gently out of conversations when I started talking about decisions I'd made, as if she were protecting him from something. From me. In January, I'd left a file at home before a morning meeting. Fiona mentioned it to the entire room before I'd even sat down. She forgot the Westover proposal, she said lightly, like it was a small and ordinary thing. My son had looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, worried, or something that wore the face of worry. "Mom, are you getting enough sleep?" I told him I was fine, but the seed was planted. I started keeping 2 copies of everything. I arrived to meetings 15 minutes early, just to review my notes one more time. I started wondering if the years of working alone after my husband died had worn something down in me that I hadn't noticed. That's what manipulation does. It makes you doubt your own eyes. That afternoon, I called Ramona Spear. She had been my attorney for 14 years, corporate contracts, property transactions, a complicated partnership dispute in 2014 that she resolved without us losing a cent. I told her everything: the supply closet, the voices, Reese Holdings, Dr. Cruz, Sunday morning, 72 hours. Ramona went quiet for a long moment. "I need a good investigator," I said, "someone discreet." She gave me Hugo Ferris, retired federal agent, financial fraud specialization. I met him that evening at a diner off the interstate. He was 64, lean, with the kind of careful stillness that comes from years of learning to listen before speaking. He ordered black coffee and didn't touch it. He took notes on paper. No phone, no recorder. "Tell me from the beginning," he said. I did. When I finished, he looked up. "How much time do we have?" "The gala is Saturday evening. She plans to get my signature Saturday night. Transfer executes Monday morning." 60 hours, he said. "Can you find enough?" He closed the notebook. "I'll find what's there. The question is whether you're ready to use it." I told him I was ready for anything. He nodded once, left 2 20s on the table, and walked out into the September dark. I didn't sleep. I lay on top of my covers, fully dressed, and thought about my husband. He had this saying, not original, I'm sure, but it was his, that the truth doesn't care whether you're ready for it. It arrives on its own schedule. By dawn, a text from Hugo found the first thread, worse than you thought. Hugo arrived at my house Thursday afternoon carrying a leather portfolio. He set 3 folders on the kitchen table: red, blue, black. "Start with red," he said. The red folder contained financial records. Fiona Reese, before she ever set foot in my boardroom, had accumulated $192,000 in gambling debts. Sports betting, private lenders, the kind who don't send letters. The kind who make other arrangements when they're kept waiting. There were wire transfers, payments from her personal accounts, not enough to clear the debt. Just enough to buy time. "She was already in serious trouble when you hired her," Hugo said. "Barlow's wasn't a career opportunity. It was a solution." I sat with that for a moment. A woman I had welcomed into my home, my business, my family. She had come to us already planning this. "Blue folder," Hugo said. Reese Holdings LLC had been formed 22 months ago in Delaware. I was not a founding partner. My son was not a founding partner. Fiona was the sole managing member. Hugo had pulled records on 9 catering contracts from the past 18 months, events that had been redirected, at the client's supposed request, to a smaller vendor called Aldercroft Event Services. I had never heard of Aldercroft. I had never approved any redirects. Aldercroft was a shell company registered to a P.O. box in Hartford. Fiona held ownership through a numbered LLC. "She's been steering your clients to herself," Hugo said, then billing Barlow's for the event management fee and pocketing the contract margin. He set out the numbers. 18 months. 9 contracts. $380,000. She hadn't just been planning to steal my company. She had already been stealing from it. "Third folder," Hugo said quietly. Dr. Mona Cruz had been my primary care physician for 4 years. She had treated me through pneumonia, managed my blood work, sat with me for an hour after my last annual physical, and listened while I talked about missing my husband. I had trusted her, the way you trust someone who sees you at your most unguarded. Hugo had found 2 prior cases. The first, a retired school principal in Westport, 78 years old, a $4.2 million estate. In 2019, Dr. Cruz filed a cognitive assessment citing significant memory impairment. The woman's son gained emergency power of attorney within the week. He sold the family home and liquidated her investments inside 4 months. Dr. Cruz received $35,000 from a consulting entity connected to the son. The second, a man from Darien, 74, who ran a small construction company. In 2021, Dr. Cruz certified him as no longer capable of managing complex financial decisions. His daughter took control of the business, sold it below market value to a prearranged buyer, and moved the proceeds into accounts her father couldn't touch. Dr. Cruz received $42,000. Both patients were now in memory care facilities. Neither had been given the opportunity to contest the assessment before it was too late. I was supposed to be the third. I closed the folder. I walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the backyard at the old oak my husband planted, the year we opened the first Barlow's. September light was coming through the branches in pieces. I had 48 hours. I turned back to Hugo. I want everything ready for Saturday night, I said. He already had it done. That evening, Virgil came to the house. I hadn't asked him to. He appeared at the back door with a paper bag of biscuits from the Millbrook kitchen and sat across from me at the table. I should have told you sooner, he said. I heard them once before, 2 weeks ago. Same room. I wasn't certain enough. I told myself maybe I'd misunderstood. You told me when it counted, I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, my mother, years ago, a woman she trusted had her sign some papers. Said it was for a health plan. By the time we understood what had happened, there was nothing left to fight for. He set his hands flat on the table. I wasn't going to let that happen to you. I reached across and covered his hands with mine. We had our full team in place by Friday midnight. Ramona had filed a preliminary injunction to freeze any transfers from Barlow's accounts. Sealed until Saturday evening. Hugo had coordinated with a forensic accountant. Isabel Briggs, the daughter of the Westport principal, had agreed to speak by live link at the gala. 2 plainclothes officers would be seated among the guests, moving only when I gave the signal. The automatic transfer to Reese Holdings was scheduled for midnight Saturday. I had 1 evening to stop it. The gala was beautiful. I want to be honest about that. The garden pavilion glowed with string lights and candles. The air smelled of chrysanthemums and the first cool breath of autumn coming in off the garden walls. 200 people I had fed, catered for, and simply known over 25 years were seated at round tables with ivory linens. My son was there in a dark suit, holding Fiona's hand. She was in burgundy, hair pinned up, working the room with the easy confidence of someone who has already decided how the night will end. She hugged me when I arrived. You look beautiful, she said. Big night. It is, I said. I held that smile all through cocktail hour, through dinner, through the slideshow. The photographs of my husband and me, the old storefront on Elm Street, our first catering van with the hand-lettered logo he had painted himself because we couldn't afford a sign company. At 9 o'clock, the master of ceremonies stepped to the microphone and announced that the founder of Barlow's Bakery and Catering would say a few words. I walked to the podium. I had a speech prepared, 3 typed pages in my evening bag. Stories about 25 years. About the people seated in that room. About my son growing up in the Fairfield kitchen, sneaking frosting off the cooling racks when he thought no one was looking. I set the pages down without looking at them. Good evening, I said. Thank you for being here. I told them about my husband. About the morning in September of 1999 when we turned the key, the door of that first empty dining room, and stood there together, holding hands and trying not to cry. About borrowing against everything we owned because he believed that if you fed people well, they would always come back. He was right, they always did. I talked about my son, about watching him grow from a boy who burned the first batch of anything he baked to a man who could run a 300-person catering operation with his father's same calm, about what it meant to have him beside me all these years. And then I stopped smiling. 25 years is a long time to build something, I said. And what I've learned is that the hardest part has never been the building. It's knowing who to trust. The room went quiet in the way that happens when people sense something is about to shift. I nodded to Hugo at the back of the room. The screen behind me came to life. An email, large enough for every table to read clearly, from Fiona Reese to the managing account of Aldercroft Event Services, dated 14 months ago. Client names, contract figures, a wire transfer instruction. I turned back to the room. Fiona Reese has been diverting Barlow's catering clients to a company she privately owns, I said. For 18 months, $380,000. Gasps. A board member at table 4 stood halfway up, then sat. My son went white. He turned to look at Fiona. She was very still. Fiona, he started. Let me finish, I said, not unkindly, but firmly. The screen changed. Financial records. Reese Holdings, LLC. The Delaware filing. Fiona's debt records. The loan payments that had never been enough. She came to Barlow's already in serious financial trouble, I said. This company was not her career. It was her way out. I let the room sit with that. Tonight, she planned to have me sign documents that would transfer Barlow's into her control within 72 hours. The signature was supposed to happen here, folded into the anniversary paperwork, while I was distracted and trusting. Fiona stood. Her face had gone very still. You can't. Please sit down, I said. She didn't move. The 2 officers near the room's exit shifted position. I clicked to the next slide. Dr. Mona Cruz, seated at table 11, had already gone pale before her name appeared on the screen. Her medical license, the 2 prior cases, the dates of the assessments, the payments she had received. My physician agreed to file a cognitive assessment this coming Sunday morning, stating that I am no longer capable of managing my own affairs, I said. She did the same thing in 2019 and again in 2021. Both patients were healthy. Both lost everything before they had any opportunity to fight back. A woman near the center of the room put her hand to her mouth. The screen changed one final time. A woman appeared on the live link. Isabel Briggs, composed and clear-eyed, sitting at home in Westport. My mother's name was Dolores Briggs, she said. She taught 6th grade in this state for 31 years. She never had dementia. Dr. Cruz said she did. My mother spent her final year in a facility outside Bridgeport, believing she had lost her mind. She paused. She hadn't. She had simply trusted the wrong person. I'm here tonight so that doesn't happen to someone else. The feed ended. The room was completely silent. I looked at my watch, 11:58. The transfer to Reese Holdings was scheduled for midnight, I said. It will not be executing. At the back of the room, Hugo pressed a key on his laptop. On the screen behind me, 4 words appeared in bold. Transfer blocked. Court order in effect. The officers moved. Fiona was arrested at the gala of the company she had tried to steal. Dr. Cruz was arrested at table 11, still holding her coffee cup. Neither of them said anything on the way out. Fiona looked back at my son once, just before the pavilion doors, I says. He looked away. I stepped down from the podium. My son was standing in the center of the room, very still, like a man who had just been in a car accident and hadn't yet felt all the places where it hurt. I walked to him. I put my hand on his arm. Mom, he said. His voice came apart on the word. I know, I said. Come on, let's go home. If you're still with me, comment still here, because this next part is the part I almost didn't tell. It's the part that cost me the most. In the weeks after the gala, while the legal proceedings began and the local papers picked up the story and two competitors called to express concern that was mostly curiosity, I sat in my husband's old office at the Fairfield location and tried to understand how we had gotten there. Fiona had seen something in my son. She had seen a man who felt invisible inside his mother's success. A man who had worked hard for years and still walked into a room and watched people's eyes move past him to find me. A man who had his father's instincts but not yet his confidence, because his confidence had never been fully given room to grow. I had done that, not deliberately, not cruelly, but I had built something so large and so thoroughly mine that my son had spent a decade finding his footing in its shadow. I had praised him in public and overruled him in meetings. I had handed him responsibility and then stood close enough to catch every mistake before it landed. I had made him feel like a guest in his own inheritance. Fiona didn't manufacture that wound. She just knew exactly where to press. His fiancée pleaded guilty in January. Fraud, embezzlement, criminal conspiracy. 4 years. Dr. Cruz's medical license was permanently revoked in November, and she faced criminal charges in 2 jurisdictions. Civil suits followed from the families of her prior patients. My son resigned from Barlow's quietly in November. He called it temporary. He moved to Portland, took a consulting contract with a hospitality group there, and started, in his words, trying to figure out who he was when he wasn't someone's son. I promoted Delia, who had been running our Glastonbury kitchen for 6 years and understood the operation better than anyone I had underestimated, to interim operations manager. Ramona helped me restructure the board. We implemented dual signature requirements on every major transaction and brought in an outside auditor. Barlow's had lost $380,000 to Fiona's diversion scheme. We had also lost 2 contracts she had deliberately undermined. The full recovery took 11 months. We recovered, we always did. In February, my son called. We talked for 20 minutes about Portland, about the rain, about a small restaurant he was advising whose owner reminded him of his father. Neither of us mentioned Fiona. At the end of the call, he said, "I should have seen it. I should have made more room for you to see things," I said. A long silence on the line. "I don't know how to come back," he finally said. "You come back 1 Tuesday at a time," I said. "You start with coffee, that's all." The following Tuesday, he drove down from Portland. We met at the Elm Street location, the original one, and sat at the corner table where my husband used to do his bookkeeping on Sunday mornings. My son ordered what his father always ordered: dark roast, no sugar, a cranberry scone he never finished. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about the therapy he had started, about what he was beginning to understand, about himself and about our family, and about what he had needed from me over the years, that I hadn't known how to give. I told him what I had understood too late, that ambition and presence are not the same thing, and that I had spent 25 years confusing one for the other. That building a legacy means nothing if the person you most want to leave it to has spent half his life feeling like he didn't quite belong in it. We didn't fix everything in an afternoon. Neither of us expected to. But he was there, across the table in the place where everything had started, eating his father's order, letting me be his mother instead of just his employer. Before we left, he looked around the room, the old tin ceiling, the photographs along the wall, the chalk menu board my husband had written on in 1999, and that we had never changed, not the font, not the colors. And he said, "I don't want you to hand it over. I want to build it with you." I held that sentence the whole drive home. The following September, we celebrated the 26th anniversary of Barlow's at the Elm Street location. Small this time, just staff and close friends. Virgil sat at the table nearest the kitchen and ate 2 portions of the lemon cake. My son stood beside me when I cut the ribbon on a new coffee bar expansion he had designed himself, over 3 months of Tuesdays. We didn't make speeches. Afterward, I went back to my husband's office and sat in his chair and looked at his photograph on the desk. The one from opening day, the two of us squinting into the September sun, holding the keys, not yet knowing what any of it would cost or how much it would be worth. I kept my promise, I told him. I protected what we built. I paused. And I'm learning, finally, to protect what matters more. Through the wall, I could hear my son laughing with Virgil about something in the kitchen. The sound came through warm and real and completely ordinary. I didn't need to hear every word. I just needed to know he was there.